So, and if you guys, I'll put you guys on mute. And this is David Poulsen with Keller Williams here in San Francisco. And we are doing real tips on investing in land today. So let's go to my screen. So I've done a presentation for you guys. And if you guys have any questions, please put them in the chat. And I would be happy to answer them for you. So we're going to be talking about buying land, and you can see there was a vacant lot here in San Francisco. So I'm David Poulsen with Keller Williams. I've got over 30 years real estate experience, probably longer, but I stopped counting at 30. Grandfather and father also worked in real estate, and actually I used to run around with them, helping them. They were buying land and other types of properties. And I started at a very young age. So I teach this, when I worked with Better Homes and Gardens, I was the head of their new development team. And I would teach this class to all their agents, actually all over the Bay Area, also into Central Valley and everywhere. And the number one question I got from agents here was, there's no land left in San Francisco, so why aren't we talking about land? Well, that's just not true. And I know you see here, you've got all these skyscrapers and things like that. Well, in between those, I bet you when you're driving by, you'll actually see some places where there's actually vacant land. And I think after this, after hearing me today, you're going to realize really that there is. So this is actually a piece of property. They were building 2 houses on a piece of vacant land in San Francisco. So you can see here that this was vacant land. You'll probably drive by something like this and you see how the houses have suddenly stopped, and you see the fence. Well, actually down there are lots there that you could build a house on. So you'll start to notice these things now after I pointed them out to you, so you get an idea that this is all over and there's opportunity all over. A lot of the time I have clients ask me about land, and so that's why I'm doing this today, so that you can get an idea about land too. I love this one. So this is probably one of the best uses of land I ever saw. This is downtown near Union Square. And I don't know, what is this? Maybe 10, 15 feet wide, but it's a little architect office. And someone came in and saw a little patch of land and built this cute little office there. So when I say it's everywhere, it really is everywhere. So why buy land? Well, like Mark Twain said, buy land, they're not making it anymore, and it's true. And then that's what we see in San Francisco, right? There's not a lot of land. There's still land out there, but not a lot. So land is tricky. In fact, most of the time when people are looking at land, it's a lot more entailed than you would think. Wait one sec. It's a lot more entailed than you would think. So a lot of the time I kind of steer people away from land, and actually I would have them look at something with a structure on it. And mainly because um, uh, you've already got that structure in place. So with land, there's a lot of regulations and things like that, neighbors, all sorts of stuff that may make it a little harder to do on, but it's an affordable way to start investing in real estate as long as you buy right. And that's the one thing you got to make sure you do is buying right. So start by looking at the zoning. What is the zoning? And what is zoning? Zoning is when the government's telling us, what can we build on that property? So if something is zoned residential, I can build something residential. I can't build my office there. Now, you can, if there is zoned commercial, sometimes you can build residential on there. But again, you have to go back to the zoning laws. So here in San Francisco, I always go, the first place I'll look is at the planning department's um, web page. And there's a line in there that says, what's my zoning? And so that's what you see on the right here. You see the SFPIM, and you'll type in the address of the property. And what's going to come out is going to tell you what the zoning is. So RH1, so I can build one house, or RH2 or RH3. Different types of zonings mean different types of things. Also give you height restrictions, so I can go up 1, 2, 3, maybe 10 stories. So that's what zoning is going to help you figure out, what can I do on here ultimately. So this is why it's so important to check out the zoning first. Make sure you're doing, you're buying it so that you can do what you want to do on it. Second tip is, what is the topography? I usually tell people, so if they're going to buy a piece of land, I say start with flat land. Flat land is important. So because it's easier to build on, it's less expensive to build on. So now if you look on the picture here to the right, you see a downslope. Those are more expensive to build on, because you're going to have to put your caissons in deeper, and those are the footings that hold up the house. It's much more expensive to build on, but not as bad as an upslope lot. Those I really would steer you away from. And why is that? Well, one, you have to dig out the hill, right? And once you dig it out, what's holding it up? You've got to build a retaining wall to hold up the hill. Um, so that can be very, very costly. So usually I would steer away from that. Important thing is that before you buy the property, make sure you know, and we're going to talk about this next time, make sure you know what it takes to build on that property. And actually that's how you back it out and figure out what the land is worth. So, and we're going to talk about that in a week or so. We'll take a look at some examples and look at properties, and we'll actually go through some arithmetic and figure out whether they're worth buying or not. So tip number 3. So this is, I guess all these tips are pretty important. This one is very important. Is make sure you've got utilities to the property. So in how do I find these utilities? So if you look at, when I go look at a piece of lot, I'm probably walking down the street, back and forth. And what am I looking for? Well, I'm looking for, those big telephone poles. And I'm looking to make sure that that they're there so that we have enough power. And then I'm looking for, what else am I looking for? I'm looking to see if there's sewer manholes. You see that big round thing? I want to make sure that the sewer is in the street. And then I'm looking for these boxes. So one of these boxes might be a water meter, and making sure that there's a water meter in front of the property that I want to buy. And why am I doing this? Well, because all this stuff is very, very expensive to bring to the property. So say you couldn't find a sewer manhole that's maybe 1,000 feet away. Well, then maybe the sewer is not running in front of your property. And maybe you have to bring, and that would mean digging up the street and bringing in pipes all the way to your property so that you had sewer on that property. Very expensive. What if you didn't find a water meter in front? Maybe there's no water there, or none of the other houses have water. So then you have to dig a well. So these are all very, very important things. Electricity is very important. So you're looking for all these things before you're starting to contemplate whether or not to buy these properties. So make sure that all these elements are there. Another important thing is called setbacks. What's a setback? Um, a setback means how far am I from my neighbor? And how far am I set back from the street? How far am I set back in the rear? How far am I set back on the sides? And this is important because say you were looking at a skinny lot, maybe a lot that's only 25 or no, even skinnier than that. Let's say we're looking at a lot that's maybe 15 feet wide or so, or 20, yeah, even 25 feet. And you're in the country. In San Francisco, it's going to be different, right? Because we have 0 lot lines, which means what? If you look at all the houses in San Francisco, they're built side by side. We still have setbacks in the front, and we still have setbacks in the back. So you have to watch out for the setbacks in the front and the back, and make sure that you have enough room on your lot still to build a house. If you're out in the country, you want to make sure the lot is wide enough with the setbacks that you can build a big enough house that you would like to build on. Now, if you look to the left here, I put on here a summary of planning code standards for residential districts. And this goes through, and this you can find on the planning department website, and take a look, and it goes through each one of the zonings. So remember, you already went to that page that said, what's my zoning? And you looked it up, and you figured out what the zoning is. Now we want to go to this grid, and we want to take a look and see what is my zoning. So let's take a look here, and this is going to give you different restrictions and setbacks and everything like that. So you start to get an idea of what I can build on here, like how big, how high, and what else do I need to do in order to build on my vacant lot. Tip number 5. Does the property have any usage restrictions? What's a usage restriction? So, sometimes you may be offered a piece of property and you can't build on it, but because it may have something called a conservation easement. Now, this is an easement that someone sold away the rights to build on it in order to keep it as open space. So you may buy the land thinking you can build something on it, and you can't because it's got what's called a conservation easement on it. And there's also other types of easements too. Now, what do we do? How do we find these? So one of the ways I would go look is, one, you start the planning department and talk to them and see if they have any notice of any easements or anything like that on it. But two, also talking with the title company. The title company is going to take a look and see what all the easements are and things that are against that property that may prohibit you from building on your own property. Very, very important. I know I keep on saying that for every one of these tips, but they are all very important. Tip number 6 is look for what the annual tax obligation is. So, and watch out for weed bills. And why do I put that? Well, we owned quite a number of vacant land parcels in different municipalities. And, a lot of the municipalities want you to keep the weeds down on it. So this can be expensive because sometimes the municipalities will go out and cut the weeds for you and give you a huge bill. It's a big money maker for cities. So you have to be super careful. Now remember, when you're buying land and if you're holding on to it, you don't have income. Usually you don't have income coming in off it. And so that can kind of be a detriment, right? Especially if you're spending money, money's going out, but no money's coming in. So think about that. Also, the other thing too is you can look on your tax bills and you may see different bonds or different assessment districts and things like that. So just realize, when you look at this tax bill here, I've got to be paying these taxes, and there are different things on here. Also, you may want to look on here because it may affect, some of these line items may actually affect the value of the property that you're buying. So always look for these different things. What you're trying, how I buy property or how I buy land, I'm always trying to prove to myself why I shouldn't buy this. So I'm looking for everything that's bad about it, or what is around that's going to stop me from doing what it is I want to do. So this is tip number 6, pretty important. Now we'll get to our last tip, and I've seen people lose money on this big time. And that was the previous uses of the property. And you said, David, why do I care about how it was used before? I'm going to use it for something else. Well, the big one is gas stations, because it contaminates the land. And actually it will prohibit you from being able to build, anything residential usually on the property then. And how do I look for these? A lot of the time I'll see corner properties. A lot of the time in the past, those used to be gas stations. Or if you look on I think on the right-hand picture there where their FedEx truck is, I saw across the way there was another gas station. So a lot of the time in the old days, they would put gas stations on all the different corners. So just be aware that's what you're looking for. Now, if you get to the point where you're going to purchase a piece of property and you think there may have been contamination on it, or you just want to be safe, there's a testing that you can do. It's expensive. It's a couple $1,000s, but better than that than not being able to build on your property. And it's called a phase 1 study. And what that phase 1 study does is goes through the history of what was on that property. So you actually hire someone to go and find the history. If you get a clear phase 1, then that's a great. If they find something in the history that's not good, they can go on further and do further testing if you want to, but usually I would recommend that you walk away from the property. It's probably not a good idea to move in that direction and can be very costly and can, what happens is if you buy that property, you're taking on the liability of that property too. And so probably you don't want to do that. So these have been my 7 tips to buying land. And next week, we'll be looking at buying land as an investment, going through the numbers. What does it look like? How do we do it? How do I figure out how much it's worth and stuff like that? In the meantime, if anyone has any questions, let's see. Oh, here's the chat. What are some key factors to look for when you want to buy land and place an apartment or a development? So if you're looking for putting in an apartment or a development, a lot of the time, you start with the zoning, and then also I always, for the very first thing I start with, I look at the neighborhood. If I see other apartment houses, then I know probably, it's a good bet that I could build an apartment house here too. If I see only single family homes, probably going to have a tougher time. But then I'm going to go down and I'm going to check the zoning. I'm going to talk to the planning department. I'm going to thoroughly vet and make sure that I can build an apartment house here. So I think that's the key factor in looking at that. Start with the zoning, and then go back through and remember you have to look at the utilities to make sure you've got the utilities for the apartment. Do you have enough land? What are the setbacks, right, for the apartment house? Because they'll have different setbacks than, say, from a regular home. So you're going to take all 7 tips that I gave you, and you're going to look at, can I use this information, and how do I apply that to a piece of land, and can I build an apartment house? Or can I subdivide this? Now, if I find a property that's big enough, say in San Francisco, if I found a 10,000 square foot lot, and we know, for our RH1, average lot size is around 2,500 square feet, I could probably build 4 homes. But I have to go through and vet that through the whole process. Does that help you? And okay, so now if anyone else has any other questions after this, please give me a call at 415-735-6188. That's 415-735-6188. And I would be happy to help you with any other questions, or if you want me to come out and take a look at a piece of land, I'd be happy to do that too. All right. Looks like we're right at the half-hour mark. And I don't see any other questions. So this has been David Poulsen here with Real Tips in San Francisco. And thank you all for attending today, and look forward to these future events. Thank you guys. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you, David.
Bye, Zane. Bye, Christina.